Hi, this is Professor Paul Knopfler here at UC Davis School of Medicine again. I'm doing a series of videos on topics related to stem cells and regenerative medicine and just science in general sometimes. The focus of today's video is on sort of an out there idea, and that is to basically clone woolly mammoths to bring them back from extinction. So this process is sometimes called de-extinction. And so I'm going to kind of go through why I'm skeptical of this and why I think, although it's really cool in a sense, and the sort of kid in me finds it appealing, that I think in a practical sense, it's a really awful idea. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and kind of go through a recent post I've done with the 5 reasons why I think this is a bad idea. So again, the kid in me, I really like the idea. I like Jurassic Park, the concept there, bring back dinosaurs. And of course, bringing back dinosaurs would be a much more difficult task just because of how long ago they lived. And what you really need to do something like de-extinct something like a dinosaur or woolly mammoth is you need either an intact set of their DNA, their genome, or you need actual cells or nuclei to basically try to clone them. And that's the way that de-extinction would work in most cases. So with dinosaurs, because they lived so long ago, millions of years ago, the odds of actually getting intact DNA that would represent a full genome is so low. Realistically, unlike some portrayals like in Jurassic Park, you couldn't really just splice in fragments with related animals or anything like that. That's not really going to work. Mammoths, it's a little bit more practical to try to get them back. They were alive not that long ago in the grand scheme of time. And yet still, finding intact cells or genomes has proven really difficult. I first wrote about the idea of de-extincting woolly mammoths on my blog, The Niche, which you can see here in this picture. I think it was like 7 years ago, and I've heard about this as much as about a decade ago. And back then, and now I'm still really skeptical, but it's still getting a lot of attention. New biotech was formed. George Church, who's this really interesting scientist, is involved. And I always find myself fascinated by the stuff that he's doing. And you can see him pictured here on my blog with, it looks like, I think, a big, maybe vertebrae or some other bone from a woolly mammoth that was isolated or found in Siberia. So there's a big push on still to try to bring back woolly mammoths. So why do I think this is a bad idea? So first of all, here's my website, The Niche, which is a blog about stem cells and regenerative medicine and other technologies. You can see all kinds of different resources up here, including videos like this one I'm doing. And by the way, if you like this video and some of the other videos on our stem cell YouTube channel, please subscribe, because there's going to be more of these videos coming. All right, so here's the part where I start talking about the reasons why I think this is a bad idea. So again, seems pretty cool. The technology, the cloning involved would be really interesting. But just on a practical side, this would be a train wreck. So first of all, let's say that you could actually succeed. Let's say in one of these adventures to Siberia, they actually unearth frozen mammoth cells that are still viable, or at least the genomes are intact. Maybe they can be, somehow either the nuclei or the genomes can be put into cells like eggs from oocytes from elephants, which are sort of the nearest relatives of mammoths. And let's say you could actually get this to work. I guess, one big question is, what's really the point? And I think, yeah, it would be fun to see mammoths, but I think in all likelihood, because of how much this is going to cost, this is, there's actually a company involved in doing this, that the cloned mammoths, whether they end up in Siberia or somewhere else, they're really basically going to be corporate products. So a big company would own them. They might end up being kind of like used kind of like zoo animals in a sense. Does that really seem like a good thing, to bring them back from extinction just to kind of use them as corporate products to make money? Some people say, well, no, that wouldn't happen, but I think it's pretty likely, given the amount of money that would be needed to do these de-extinction efforts. So I just kind of worry, like, what would life be like for these mammoths? And this kind of gets, so that's reason 5, and I'm kind of going in least to most important order. And this kind of gets this next reason, number 4, which is that these mammoths probably, I think, there's a good chance they would mostly be sick. So woolly mammoths already went extinct. I don't know that we know entirely why that's true. It could be disease, and I mentioned in my post with mastodons that tuberculosis could have played a role. And bringing back mammoths into our world, we already know this world is a warming world. There's a lot different ecosystem and environment than what the mammoths were used to. So I think it's very unlikely that they, once brought back, that they would thrive and be healthy. So I think, in addition to basically being like zoo animals, even if there's a large space given to them, they're still going to be confined. They're still going to be subject to probably tight security because of how valuable they are. I think also they're probably going to be pretty sick. The other thing to keep in mind is that cloning is a pretty complicated, messy kind of process. So some of us have heard about the kinds of cloning that goes on with farms, and that's actually been worked out pretty well in some cases for certain farm animals. You can clone them. A lot of times there's really not a great reason to do that. You can just rely on the sort of standard reproductive process for like making cows and chickens. But I guess if you get a really unique specimen who has certain attributes, like for a dairy cow making a ton of milk, for a cow that's going to be used for meat, somehow the quality of their muscle is really unique that gives certain kind of meat, maybe you want to clone them in that case. But really the cloning process for other animals outside the agricultural domain, it's been really challenging. And like, for instance, with dogs, it took a really long time to get cloning to work in dogs. And the process generated hundreds, perhaps thousands of malformed embryos, lots of miscarriages, all kinds of problems. So I think there's a really likely probability that this mammoth cloning process would be really ugly, and I don't know if they would try to cover that up or if they would be very open about it, but likely it would not just be boom, clone, you get a good mammoth, that's healthy and all this stuff. It would actually be really messy. So that's sort of a dark side to this, I think. The next reason, number two, I've taken some heat for this reason since I put this post up, but I still think there's some truth to this, and that is that the more we clone other animals, and the mammoth cloning would be, big news, I think it sort of allows us to get more comfortable with the idea of perhaps cloning humans, whether it's modern humans or Neanderthals. And so I think just as we get more comfortable with the idea of animal cloning, we need to be cautious about not going down that path for humans. Finally, and this is really the main reason, is I'm very worried that this project to try to de-extinct mammoth, it's going to end up hurting elephants. So as many of you already know, elephant populations are already in serious jeopardy in many parts of the world, and the populations of elephants have declined. So doing this mammoth cloning and de-extinction project would almost 100% require a lot of materials from elephants and living elephants themselves to participate. You would need to get eggs from female elephants, and really we shouldn't be doing that. That process of treating elephants with hormones and getting the eggs out, which as far as I understand has never successfully been done, even for other purposes. Even if you get that to work, those female elephants should not be subjected to that, I don't think. They should be allowed to kind of go about their life and perhaps breed to produce more elephants that are needed to sustain their populations, not used for some kind of pet project that really doesn't have much benefit to the world. And again, by that I mean the Mammoth De-Extinction project. It's possible some people might try to, once they've created a cloned mammoth embryo, again, if that's even possible, they might try to use elephants as surrogate mothers. Again, that's a bad idea. We should be leaving those elephants alone. So I think all in all, this is going to be something that's really bad for elephants. So that kind of wraps up why I'm so skeptical about this mammoth de-extinction idea. Part of me hates to be so critical about it, kind of a wet blanket about this idea, but because it is kind of fun just in a bubble if you don't consider the implications to think about. But again, in the real world, this is an awful idea. So again, this is Paul Knopfler here at UC Davis School of Medicine. I hope to see you next time for one of our other videos, and I'll see you then.